Okay, good afternoon. As Alo said, I'm Beilmann from the Institute of Social Studies in University of Tartu, and I will talk about a survey or a report that we published this spring. It was about the attitudes of Estonian population towards new migrants from the third countries in the European Social Survey data. And as this implies, we used European Social Survey data from 2014. So our data comes from the time just before the migration got really big media coverage and a lot of attention. So it is before the migration crisis. And I will give an overview which groups in Estonian society hold more negative or positive attitudes towards migrants. And to do that, I use index of migration attitudes that we composed with our colleagues. This index take into account different aspects like what people think about different groups of migrants. Are Muslims welcomed? Are Roma people welcomed? And so on. Also, do people think that new migrants are good for a country as a whole, for a economy, for a culture, and also are people ready to accept people from different cultural background in their family or as their boss? So very many different aspects are included in this index. And one thing, more thing that I should mention before presenting the results is that this study was representative to the whole population of Estonia. It's a good thing in one hand, so it really shows something, some general trends in Estonian society, but on the other hand, we can't say much about the radicalization based on this data, because radical individuals are a really small portion of society, and they don't show up in such a wide-scale studies or surveys. But now going to the results. This slide here shows the general attitudes towards new migrants in Europe. So Estonia compared to 13 other countries where this research took place. And the higher the score, the more positive are people about migration, and the lower the score, the less positive they are about the migration. Sorry, all the pictures are scales are in Estonian. I didn't translate this. And as we can see from this, Estonian people are rather skeptical about the positive outcomes of the migration, and only people in Czech Republic are even more negative towards new migrants. Now, looking at some correlates between some socioeconomic factors and attitudes towards migrants. It showed up that in Estonia, age is extremely important predictor of migration attitudes. The older the people are, the more negative they are towards new migrants. And when we compare this outcome with other European countries, it seems that Estonia is quite exceptional in that regard, because this relationship between age and migration attitudes is not that strong in other countries, or it's completely lacking in some. There is also a relationship between education and migration attitudes. As expected, people with higher education are more positive towards migration and new migrants, whereas people with lower education are more negative or careful about migration. And it also applies in other European countries, though the relationship between education and immigration attitudes is even more strong in Western European countries than it is in Estonia. As mentioned in previous presentations already, trust plays a very important role in forming people's attitudes towards other people, state institutions, and states. And also our study showed that trust strongly predicts migration attitudes. First, when we look at the generalized social trust, that is trust towards people in general. Do people think that other people are honest and can be trusted? When people do believe that other people are trustworthy, they are also more tolerant towards new migrants. So it seems that people who suspect their co-citizens to be not very honest or not very nice people are afraid that the newcomers are not better or are even worse. And maybe the more important factor is the trust in state institutions. And our survey showed that people who trust in state institutions are in general more positive about new migrants, and people who are least trusting towards state institutions are most afraid about the effects of migration. We also looked the relationship between racist attitudes and attitudes towards new migrants, and no surprise, people who tend to think that people from some cultures are better or more able to do a good work and so on, they are also more negative towards new migrants. And we also looked at the relationship between labor market status of people and the attitudes toward new migrants. And as this slide shows, the most positive about the new migrants are the high school students at the age of 15 till 19. And also university students. And the most negative are elderly people who are not working anymore, and also people who are not active in the labor market tend to be somewhat more negative. So it seems that people who have some reason to be less secure in their own lives are more skeptical about migration. And to wrap it all up, in Estonian case, the most important predictors of migration attitudes are age. So elderly people are tend to be more negative towards migration. The second most important factor is trust in institutions. So if people do not trust state institutions like legal system, police, government, they are negative also towards newcomers, most probably because they are feeling unsecure in their life already, and so they are afraid of changes. And the third factor that is very important in affecting migration attitudes is previous life experiences. So I didn't show any pictures of that because it's so obvious that people who have lived abroad, who have friends in other countries or from other cultures, tend to be more positive towards new migrants because they are already more familiar with other cultures and diverse people and cultures, and so they are not so afraid of it. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.